Chapter. My name is Amanda Botello, and I proudly serve on the restaurant marketing team here at OpenTable. We are so very grateful to welcome you today to In It Together, our weekly webinar series. If you like what you hear today, we hope you'll consider joining us each Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping items. If you have questions along the way, please use the Q&A box in the top right corner of your console. We'll save time towards the end of the conversation to answer a couple of your questions. In the resources list section on the bottom left, we've linked out to our restaurant blog, our COVID-related resource center, today's featured charity, and the registration page for future episodes. This webinar will also be recorded and shared with all of you afterwards. And with that, I'm delighted to hand it over to our host of the series, our very own Chief Operating Officer, Andrea Johnston.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea. Thanks so much for joining us today. I think I've said in before webinars, and I'm going to say it again, these last few weeks have been really tough, I know, for everybody personally, and as you well know, brutal for restaurants. We've pulled these webinars together to connect restaurateurs, keep that community alive, and try and share resources and information here. And OpenTable, we're committed to helping restaurants and supporting them as we get through this reopening, which is why I'm very thrilled that we were able to announce our Open Door initiative last week, which is essentially waived subscription fees through the end of the year, waived cover fees in Q3, 50% cover fees in Q4, and then regular rates in through 2021. So if you're interested in learning about that, head to the resource center there, and you can get more information. But to other folks that are helping people work through this terrible period, I'm so thrilled to have Chef Edward Lee and Jessica Kossler join us today. By way of background, Chef Edward Lee is a James Beard Award-winning writer, as well as a chef and restaurateur in both Kentucky and Washington, D.C. He's also an advocate and co-founder of the Lee Initiative, and we're going to hear how, which is to bring more diversity and equality to the restaurant community. We'll hear more about how he pivoted his organization to aid in this COVID pandemic. Also, Chef Jessica Koslow, got a James Beard Award nomination on Monday. Congratulations. She's a renowned chef and owner of Squirrel and Onda, both in Los Angeles. And she's got a mad penchant for jams and advocacy work, which brought her to work with the Lee Initiative. Great. Well, let's kick it off and just open-ended question. And I'll start with you, Jessica. Tell us about how the past few weeks have been for you.
Wow, it has been incredible. It has been really a moment where you see the best in people, and really, I've never met more people in Los Angeles in our industry than I have in the past few weeks. We closed down our restaurant on the 3rd of April, and we started the Lee Initiative at Squirrel on the 4th of April. So now we're just over a month in, and we'll keep doing it through May and maybe even a little bit into June, who knows. And what I've seen is both the swath of Jonathan Gold kind of, I feel like he'd be so proud to see something like this occurring in Los Angeles, and the type of industry and hospitality people that are showing up every day to get a meal, to get provisions, to think about the future. It's really been quite rewarding. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Ed.
Ed, how have your past few weeks been?
It's been busy, to say the least. We did not think, a month, 2 months ago, I didn't think I was going to be doing full-time nonprofit work, but here I am, basically on the phone about 8 hours a day, and then at nighttime we're writing emails and policy work and trying to get ahead of whatever the next big crisis or the next big chapter of this crisis is going to be. A big shout out to Lindsay Osasic, who's the co-founder as well. And basically we divide and conquer each day with what's needed. And we just try and keep this going for as long as it's needed.
Well, you're doing incredible work, and I can only imagine how hard it is right now, also having your restaurants in mind. For the broader group, can you talk a little bit about the Lee Initiative and how you got it started?
Yeah, so the Elite Initiative was it was a small initiative that we had started 2 years ago to just sort of bring awareness and equality into the restaurant business. And we shut our restaurants down on March 15th, and we just saw this need immediately that myself, I had furloughed about 90 people from my 3 restaurants in Louisville. And there were thousands of people who had been laid off. And so we thought we should do something to help. There was food in our walk-ins. There was a local hotel chain that gave us 3 van loads of food that they donated to us that week. And so we just saw this picture coming together where we could use our restaurant as, because we weren't going to do anything else. So we could use it as a relief kitchen and use it not only to feed our staff, but to feed anyone that was restaurant business. And that quickly ballooned when Maker's Mark came on board, and they said, well, this is not a Louisville problem or Kentucky problem. This is a nationwide problem. This is going on in every city across America. And so they were able to find the seed money for us to go ahead and approach different chefs around the country to really partner with and say, we're doing this here, feeding 200 people a night, using food donations and seed money and giving out supplies. Can you do the same in your city for your community? Lo and behold, we did not sleep for 2 weeks. We basically went from 1 relief kitchen in Louisville to about 15 in 2 weeks. And then we opened 4 more in the last couple of weeks. So it's been a crazy ride. But, I'm thankful that we were able to do it. I'm thankful we have partners. I'm thankful for people like OpenTable, who's been helping to spread the word. And all the outreach and all the people in the community that have given back has been incredible.
That's awesome. And so you're in about 20 cities now. Is the model the same? And do the needs of the city vary at all?
No, they're all very different. And so really, I really say, like, we don't have 20 relief kitchens. We have 20 partners. And each city, like Jessica does an incredible thing where, she identifies the problems in her city. She knows her community obviously better than I do. And she can fit her needs better. And so it's really working with all the different chefs who are really trying to meet the needs in their community. It's been amazing to see how every single chef has gone above and beyond the call of action, and has really, really, figured out ways to fundraise, to help community, to get outreach, to get spread the word. It's been, despite all this darkness, it's been a real joy to work with everyone, and knowing that, we're still a community, we're still a family, and that's my dog. And so that's been, I know, it's been really special. But yeah, so we're working on a phase 2, which will involve also now helping small farmers and seeing what they need, because we really do not want to forget the farmers throughout all this, because they're really hurting now as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to interrupt and say that a big part of the Lee Initiative and why it's been important not only to keep some employment of my staff, but also to continue to support the farmers, because they've grown produce for this season based on what they considered would be sold to restaurants. And now that has shifted into more of a box model to actual homes, and the quantities aren't the same. And so the Lee Initiative has really helped to continue to get produce from the farmers in our doors and out to the community.
Yep, I'm getting my boxes.
Like right now, like rhubarb's one of my favorite things, in the entire world. And right now, we should have 200 pounds of rhubarb, going through our kitchens. And quite frankly, we haven't ordered any, because that's not what people want right now. It's not what people need. But, my farmer is always used to growing 200 pounds of rhubarb, and sending it our way as soon as it's ready. And so things like that are really hurting farmers right now. And they have no control. They can't stop the process. If you're raising cattle or you're raising pigs, you can't stop it just because of the crisis. So they've got a lot of food that's coming to fruition right now. And you just don't want to see it go to waste.
You
Absolutely.
also,
Jess,
in some ways, don't want to take it all for free either. As much as
Exactly.
as much as they want to give it to us too, it's been rewarding to be able to pay them.
yeah. Jessica, you were working on your own relief kitchen in Ondab, and then you pivoted over to the Lee Initiative. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that happened and how you're personally feeling about it in LA?
Yeah, I mean, I was following their lead. I saw originally the Lee Initiative was at Moza with Nancy, and it was incredibly inspiring. And Los Angeles is a large city. It's a huge sprawling city. And so Onda's on the west side of town. And I started to just talk to Nancy and Mike every day to kind of get a sense of the systems that they were, how they had organized themselves, how they were giving out food, what they were giving out every day. And then I started to reach out to people that I knew, whether it was Imperfect Produce or someone at Corn. I reached out to Busy Phillips, and we all started to kind of collectively, whether it was in-kind donations or actually donations themselves, got a bit together. And then I talked to Mike, and he said that Nancy had tested positive and that they needed to move the initiative. And I just took what I had already started to do and applied it to the initiative, because it was a bigger foundation for me to work off of. I think that open source, in terms of information about how to do this in your own city, whether it's with the Lee Initiative or not, will really help to help people, restaurants feel empowered to be a part of being there for the community that has been there for us for so long.
So if a restaurateur on this call wanted to do this, is open source where they should go to get the information, and or do they need to raise their own money from their local community? What would be some tips for them?
I would defer to Ed for that.
Yeah, so we get phone calls and emails every day from restaurants from all over the country, and the Lee Initiative. I mean, our resources are limited too. So basically, what we tell people is, whatever city that you're in, there is a food bank somewhere. Wherever city that you're in, there is a company with money that's willing to give locally, whether it's an insurance company, a car dealership, whatever it is. Reach out to the companies that have money, figure it out, find ways that you can get food donations, and start it on a grassroots level. And I believe that when you start something and you put it out there, that kindness is rewarded, it's contagious. And people come out of the woodworks and start to give you. And really, what we've proven throughout this whole thing is that chefs can really do a lot with a little bit of seed money and a little bit of food donations. We can actually create a lot. And so once you get that ball rolling, I think you'll be surprised at how quickly it'll grow. But it's that first initial step that's the hardest, because we're all suffering too, and we're all looking at our bank accounts sort of dwindling, and it's hard to think about giving back when you're in a situation that's also quite scary. But it is that. And to Jessica's point, when Nancy had tested positive, we were in such an unpredictable and uncertain place, and I mean, we were on the brink of actually shutting down the entire initiative, because we thought, oh my God, the last thing that we want to do is have all of our chef partners get COVID because of what we're doing. And if you remember at the time, there was no guidelines coming down from the federal government. There was very little information about this. And we were kind of just in the dark. We were trying to help people, but we were in the dark. We were, what the government was saying, what the CDC was saying, what the individual state governments were saying were all different. And there was so much misinformation and so much stuff online. And we were just trying to make heads and tails out of it. And it seems like an eternity ago now. But there was this time when we thought, well, we can't do this. We have to shut this whole thing down. And luckily it was people like Jessica who came on board so quickly and said, I got this, let me do this. And luckily we didn't, and we haven't had a single case after that. But it was really uncertain in those moments. There was a couple of moments like that in the past 2 months where we thought this is all going to go to hell really fast.
Mm-hmm. And Jessica, when we spoke last week, you talked about some of the heartbreaking stories of folks coming in to get the food, but also the real warmth that you're feeling from the community to support. So could you talk a little bit about that? And then also, as restaurants reopen, as you think about reopening, like how do you balance out continuing to do this and building out your restaurant?
Okay, so question one is some of the stories that I'm experiencing, some of the folks that are coming through. It's a swath, and I'm sure, Ed, you're seeing this too. We have a whole family that works at IHOP, so there's nothing coming in. I have a sous chef who moved from New York, to work at a hotel restaurant. So he was living in the hotel, and then he got furloughed. The hotel closed, so he's living out of his car. And then he still volunteered his time to come every Sunday to help the Lee Initiative. Those are the kinds of people that I'm like overwhelmed by. You have people coming every day who now have given us masks, brought us their homemade cookies, bagels from the shop they work at 2 days a week. It's the ways that the people are giving back is really emotional to me. And I'm sure every city has stories like this. I think the bigger question will be, how do we reopen? And that is still a question mark. And, safety is the number one priority for us, as it should be for every restaurant. And the Lee Initiative has allowed us to actually really consider how to reopen while taking those measures in the restaurant right now. So whether the cooks, they never actually engage with anyone who's coming up for a food. So they're kind of in their own hub and bubble every day. The volunteers themselves are in masks and gloves the entire time. But the safeguards that we'll come back with at Squirrel will be even stronger, even stranger. I talked to Dan Barber yesterday, and he has a Q&A every day, and he started to mix up the questions so that it's not easy for people just to go no. But I'm sure we're all going through the same thing of what is the new normal going to look like, and it's going to be looking very strange for a while until there's some sort of cure or shot.
Yeah, and Ed, so what sort of support do you see hospitality workers continuing to need as restaurants reopen and as how you reopen happens? Obviously, with limited staff and limited capacity, there are going to be a lot of folks that can't come back to work just yet.
No, I think, there's this narrative that we're going to reopen the states and reopen the country, and then everything will get back to normal pretty quickly, and I just don't see that happening. The harsh reality is that no matter how much we help the restaurant workers, if the restaurant owners go out of business, there are no jobs. And that's something that, it's hard as an owner to ask for a bailout, since, we are the owners, and so we should be in a place of financial security. But there is a point at which if the restaurant owners don't see profitability, we're going to close our restaurants. And when we close our restaurant, there's no amount of PPP and there's no amount of stimulus that's going to help the millions of people that are going to be out of work. So it's really about trying to stabilize the whole restaurant industry right now so that we have some kind of foundation to land on when we reopen. And if that means 50% capacity for 6 months, we'll figure it out. But the biggest frustration for me right now is that there are no guidelines, and everything is, the federal government is contradicting state governments. and the state governments contradicting city governments and cities. And so there's a lot. And at the end of all that, what it means for the consumer is that they have very little confidence in this reopening. And so, for me personally, I would rather wait it out 3 months until everyone feels at ease. And then we can open, with a real party and a bang and say, we're open, come, versus sort of treading in these really dark waters right now where some are open and some are not, and some are wearing masks and some are not. It's making the general public very scared. And that's the last thing we need as an industry, is for the public to be scared about going out.
I mean, just to add to what you're saying, it's, we don't necessarily have access to PPE, KN95 or 95 masks. That is not something that is available to us. And as essential workers who are in spaces that need to be redefined with distancing, that is the challenge in terms of making the public feel safe and making our teams feel safe. Inability to actually acquire those products and also to acquire them at a cost that isn't detrimental to restaurants, and so that is where at a federal level, I'm curious if any support will happen. It doesn't seem like it, but that's kind of one of the biggest issues on my mind is how to get PPE. And if we don't, what are the other ways that we're going to go about safeguarding our teams, whether it's face shields or oximeter readings or, digital or temperature readings. So all of that is great, but it doesn't match up with, PPE.
Yeah.
Sorry for this. Sorry, guys.
No, that's great. And it's stuff that we all need to be thinking about, right? So I guess last sort of question from me before we move to Q&A from everyone who's on is how do you think that the community should continue banding together to support each other, to share information, to help reopen in these times, recognizing that different restaurants are in different financial positions, states are so different? Like, what would be your best advice to continue with community?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, I think everyone has the power to help right now. Everyone across America, and right now, listen, I love when people tweet, and I love to waste hours a day on social media. But right now is the time to get out of your chair and go out and help. And there are many, many restaurants, independent restaurants doing takeout. It's not going to save them, but it helps the bottom line a lot. Go, the Grubhub and the Uber Eats apps. Go out, drive to your local favorite restaurant and get takeout. Help them. If there are local food charities, food banks that you can help with, please help them. Even $10 helps. Anything you can do to call your local politician, your mayor, your congressman, your senator, and lobby on behalf of what the restaurant business means to you as an individual is great. As much as we lobby our government, it's coming from us, and it's our self-interest that we're trying to fix. If you, the general public, go out there and say, no, we need to save independent restaurants because it means so much to us as a culture, as a community, what we've seen, like that goes a long way to tell people that this stuff matters. It's not, what we don't want to be is like, it's not a bunch of fancy chefs trying to save our restaurants. We're really trying to save an industry. We're trying to save millions of jobs and a food supply chain that starts at the farmer and goes all the way through to our restaurants. Like there's a lot at stake here. And so the more you can just go out there and advocate for us, it's great.
It's great. Jessica, anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is if you're in this industry, take as much time as you can to talk to others in this industry that are whether in your city or outside the country, see how they're responding, see how they're shifting, what they're thinking will be normal. I've had some really interesting talks recently, one in Mexico City where there's no unemployment benefits and no such thing as PPP. Talking to chefs in the States who are all kind of shifting to not only have a restaurant, but to have some sort of core product that now can be in their home. You know, just thinking about how our industry is maneuvering and what that means to you. Now, no, they don't have the answer for what you need to do, but it can, just a conversation can help broaden your perspective about what you're doing in your own, you know, ecosystem. So.
Great advice. Well, thank you both for your candor and sharing your thoughts on this. In support, OpenTable is going to make a donation to the Lee Initiative in support of what you all are doing. So thank you. And with that, why don't I hand it back to Amanda to help drive some of the questions.
Great. Lots of great questions coming in, so big thanks to all of you. First question being, how long do you anticipate keeping the community kitchens open? And then you alluded to a phase 2 with the project. Can you speak to both of those pieces?
Yeah, so really every relief kitchen is working on their own separate timeline because there's no one consistent sort of timeline. So it's really like LA will probably go on for quite a bit, you know, and unfortunately, you know, places like Texas are very weird right now because technically you can reopen, but the relief kitchen that we're working with in Houston, you know, Ryan Lashane is saying we're not opening, and you know, there are still people that are sorely in need and out of work. So we're really looking at it now case by case and just looking at what cities are trying to reopen. You know, everyone's going to reopen on a different timeline. But I would say for sure, definitely until June, and then beyond we'll see. And then phase 2 is something that we're really committed to. Over the next year, we are going to fundraise and spend over $1 million on small farms across America. We're going to take those products, buy them from farmers at full market value price, and then we're going to donate it back to small restaurants who need product when they reopen and relaunch their restaurants. Because we all know that when we do reopen and relaunch, our funds are low. PPP will probably be exhausted by then. We're not going to have the money to reopen. So hopefully this will give them a little bit of a boost to help them make payroll that first week so they can just keep going.
That's incredible. I know so much of your focus has been on these community kitchens as of late, but when you think of your own businesses, how are you staying in touch with your guests, with your employees during this time? What does that look like?
For both of us, or?
Yeah, Jessica, why don't you take it?
You know, I send out volumes. Like I'm about to send out volume 5 today, which is kind of an update on the world of Squirrel. And that goes out to the entire team, just to keep people updated in terms of what's going on, just being honest about, you know, what the future holds and where we're at. You know, I do the social media for Squirrel and for, you know, for Onda and myself. So I get a lot of DMs from diners that are missing the restaurant or that are making the food at home. That's it. Yeah, that's how we're doing it.
Okay. Add anything from your end?
No, I mean it's been you know, we this is really depressing to think about, but we just this past Saturday would have been the Kentucky Derby. And it would have been, you know, the thing we look forward to every year, and there was no Kentucky Derby, so we did a, you know, we did a Kentucky Derby meal, you know, to go, and I was surprised we sold out. We had a lot of people call up, and it was a lot of our regulars who would have been dining with us called up and came to pick up meals, and so I actually got dressed up and wore a hat and put on all my Derby outfit, and I handed out meals on Derby Day, and it was nice. It was just, you know, something to do, and I got to talk to a lot of regulars who I haven't seen in months. So that was a nice day. As depressing as it was still nice.
Well, I'm sure all of your guests appreciated that reprieve as well.
Yeah, and I think that's like the thing as a chef, as a restaurant owner, that we probably miss more than anything else is like, you know, this time has given us a lot of appreciation for our family, but also an appreciation for our other family, which is our restaurant community, and the people that fill our dining rooms. And those are people that I miss terribly. I miss seeing Jeff on a Sunday getting a huge jug of turmeric tonic. You know, these are people that have really affected our lives. And so a moment like that, it's wonderful that you can do that, Ed, and see them from afar, because, you know, we've seen them grow up. They've seen us grow up, and it's kind of what keeps us as chefs going, I think.
Mm-hmm. Earlier on the call, we talked about, you know, the challenges with reopening and how it pertains to a lower consumer confidence in dining out. For restaurants that do need to reopen right away or sooner than waiting it out a bit, what recommendations do you have for those restaurateurs as far as conveying to diners that it's okay to dine with them and instilling that consumer confidence in them to get back into the restaurant?
Listen, the one thing that I have vowed not to do during this whole crisis is to judge or criticize what any other restaurant chooses to do. I think every restaurant has their own right and their own, you know, we're all adults here. They can do that. But for me, it's really important that we band together as a hospitality nation, if you will. Any restaurant that opens up right now, it has a microscope on them. And everyone is looking at them. Mm-hmm. And if there's one misstep, if something is done wrong, if there's an outbreak, if customers are not treated correctly, if there are safety issues, unfortunately, that is going to reflect on our entire industry. And there are going to be policies and choices and decisions made based on a very small control group of restaurants that are open right now. And so it's really important. I just want to urge every restaurant that's open right now to do so carefully, to think about the greater community at large, because it really will affect everyone in the hospitality industry.
That's a really good point. Jessica, do you have thoughts on how to instill additional, you know, consumer confidence in your guests and how you're thinking of that differently or the same at Squirrel versus Onda? Or
I truly think that Ed answered that question really well, and I also think it's important not to give not to provide ideas on this, because everyone else is going to have their own ideas to what it means to open, and to open in their own way, or recommendations, let me say. So like my recommendations, I think we should take cues from what is being proposed on a government level. And unfortunately, they're not strong enough. So whatever it is, we need to go beyond it at this point. Onda and Squirrel are very different. Onda has enough space to make social distancing possible. Squirrel does not. So, you know, each location is going to have its own way in which it reopens. And, you know, Squirrel will not be open for months for anything other than takeout. And the way that we are going to operate internally is at a very, very tight level. I'm not playing around, and I'm definitely not opening when the mayor lifts the ban. I'm going to take my time to make sure that every single way we're going to be safe is the first priority, and then I can think about reopening. So my timeline is very different. I know that some people kind of need to open their doors right now because they are struggling and they need to make sure that they have revenue coming in the door so that there's a potential for them to make it through this crisis. And I understand that. I just agree that security measures, no matter how big or small, have to be taken in order to provide confidence. And I guess one thing I will say, something I saw, an employee of mine sent a photo of security tape, you know, that you see like at the airport or like TSA, I don't know, but it was security tape over the bag. And it made him feel really secure getting this package that had been delivered via Postmates. And I hadn't even thought about like what a simple gesture that was to say, look, that hasn't been tampered with, because you know that when your to-go gets into someone's car, that to-go, you don't know what happens, you don't know where it moves around the vehicle, but to have that security tape made them feel really safe. And I don't know how much of a sense of security it is, but we are going to do that because it brought a sense of comfort. And also I think about, you know, how they roll around the car, and it's probably a great way to keep it all in the bag.
So actually, I have a question. I have a question for both of you. We've gotten a lot of requests from diners and a lot of requests from restaurants at OpenTable. Hey, when things start to reopen, can you put on OpenTable on the profile page, they're wearing face masks, they're wearing gloves, they're doing temperature checks, or and you know, I sort of have mixed feelings on that, because on the one, for those that are doing that, if you want that information out there, great, because that could give diners that same sense of peace, but not everybody's going to be doing it the same way, and so it could be discriminatory. I'm not sure. So I was actually curious your opinion, if we can, how we should think about this from the OpenTable side of things.
And that's going to be tricky for OpenTable, because then you become the de facto, you know, police, or, you know, you become the new Zagat's guide for safety in restaurants. And that's a responsibility. That's like, if OpenTable is going to do that, then you also can't take it lightly. And then just say, oh, we heard you were wearing masks, so we're going to give you a check mark on our website, right? So and then find out that they're in fact not doing it, right? So it becomes all these things in practice sounds like a great idea, or in theory they sound like a great idea. In practice, it's very hard to oversee, enforce, to guarantee these things. And again, all it takes is that one misstep when it says on OpenTable that this restaurant is wearing masks, the consumer goes there and they're not wearing masks. And all of a sudden now, you know, you damage your credibility, you damage all, you know, and also the consumer goes, oh, well, this is not real.
Right. Yeah. And I think we would tell our restaurant customers to self-report what they're doing, right? On just like you put your own fundraising page up and we promote it, or your gift card things up. So I think we would approach it that way. So we're not going out there and badging everybody. You would be telling us. But I think your point remains, like, what if a restaurant said they're doing that and a diner shows up and there's a challenge? Jessica, what's your thought on that?
No, it's the same question, Mark. It really, really is, because each state and also has their own rules to follow. So first of all, just, I guess, knowing the rules of each state. And then a restaurant does say that they're wearing masks. It just takes one person to like have their mask down because maybe they're tasting something, tossing a spoon, to a diner taking a photo of that individual saying, look, that person is not wearing a mask. It causes confusion, and hopefully the restaurants are doing the right thing. It's hard to report on that, especially with the number of restaurants in the United States.
Yeah, and listen, you know, for all of our safety concerns, you know, I cook at home every night. You know, and Jessica knows this, like, food is sensual. Food is, you know, you have to touch it, you have to feel it, you have to smell it, you have to, I mean, there is a point at which, you know, we're not hospitals, and we can't turn into hospitals. And I know that safety is a concern, and all these are the things that keep me up at night. Like, I have to touch my food. You know, I have to smell the produce. I have to be able to you know, I have to taste things, and so do my chefs. And so there's a point at which we have to be safe. But at what point are we going to turn into an industry that cooks food, as if we're in a lab? Like, that's not going to work either. So, at some point, I don't know. I don't, I come to this crossroad every night in my dreams, and I come to this impasse, and I go, at some point there has to be a solution that allows us to go back to doing what we do, which is touch food, which is hug our customers. Pour. I love drinking wine out of the bottle. Like these are things that this is who we are. And at some point, hopefully, we can get back to doing that. So, and I don't know. I don't know a timeline. I don't know what that means for us. But I hope we don't, have a permanent restaurant industry where we're treated like we're hospitals. Like, 'cause it can't be that sanitized either.
No.
I mean, you've talked about this too, Ed, is like the idea of reopening your restaurant at 50% capacity, and do your servers wear masks while taking orders at the table? Is that where we would be going? And how does that feel as an experience on both ends? So.
Yeah, we were speaking with. We were speaking with Kwame. Sorry, go ahead. You can hear from me all day long. We want to hear from you. Please.
No, I was just going to say, no, everyone has a different threshold too of their own personal, I listen, I have friends of mine here who are very smart, intelligent people who are telling me I'm not wearing a mask. Like, this is ridiculous, right? So everyone has a different threshold, and people go to restaurants to escape this, and some. I just have this fear that you're going to go to a restaurant and everyone's in masks and gloves, and the consumer is going to go, well, I didn't come here to be reminded of this, and that's another real fear for me.
Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, I think so many of us look to dining to be transported, to have a bit of an escape. And what you're mentioning doesn't necessarily provide that in that environment. Well, thank you all for this great conversation today. Thank you for everything that you're doing for your communities, these kitchens, for the industry as a whole. We will share out a copy of this recording with all of you who joined us as audience members today. And then we also hope you'll join us next Wednesday when we connect with James Beard Foundation CEO Claire Reichenbach and Chef Kwame Anwachi of Kith & Kin to learn how they are navigating advocacy on behalf of the restaurants. Until then, please be safe, take good care of yourself and others. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica and Ed.